Thank you for bearing with us as our audio quality is impacted due to recording outside in COVID-safe environments.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this, our 8th installment of Please Join Me. This is Joe Traina. I'm honored to have with me a very special guest today, I have to say, one of the premier clarinetists and saxophonists that I know.
I wrote this for him.
Yes.
Keep going.
And that I know anywhere on the scene today. His resume reads like a who's who of working with jazz bands of his own.
Some would say, what's that?
But anyway, with all sorts of people who are notable as well in the strata of some of the best jazz musicians, I would say, in the country, if not the world. Ken Peplowski is here with me, and I'm a fan. I first heard him a number of years ago live. My then clarinet teacher, Bill Blount, insisted I come and see him. And unfortunately, I did not hear him live again for many years until his recent, I believe it was 2019, gig at Birdland with his big band. And several of the members in the band are folks that have graced my groups and friends of mine. John Gordon, who studied with gentlemen in Staten Island that I did when we were kids together, Cesar DeMoro, and John Allred, Mike Karn, who worked with me, Aaron Johnson, whom I'm acquainted with. So it's a great band, needless to say. Just to give you a little bit of Ken's background, he hails from Cleveland, Ohio, where he began playing in Polish polka bands, which actually are having something of a resurgence these days. There are some very fine polka bands who have some really, I would say, very good followings. And Ken started experimenting with jazz in the stage bands, as many of us did when he was a teen. And after college, he went into the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra under the direction of the great trombonist Buddy Morrow. Of course, he worked beyond that as he got a little bit older. He met Sonny Stitt while on the road, one of my real influences and a great musician I listen to often. And he was an inspiration to Ken. So he never heard anybody play, quoting Ken, with such amazing consistency as Sonny Stitt through all kinds of settings. So on to the 80s, where Ken actually worked with Benny Goodman. And some would say that Benny is a good influence on Ken. I would say profound. How would you put it, Ken?
Profound is a good word for that.
Profound influence on you.
Changed my life before I met him and after I met him.
And also, I'm just going to rush through the rest of it so Ken can finally say a few things to you folks out there listening. He's worked with Mel Torme, Leon Redbone, Charlie Bird, Peggy Lee, George Shearing, Madonna, Hank Jones, Dave Frishberg, Rosemary Clooney, and the list goes on and on and on. Steve Allen, Bill Charlap, Woody Allen. So anyone who I think traffics in this music has, of course, wanted Ken to be in their orbit. I will now turn the microphone finally over to Ken Peplowski, who is, I think, fighting hard to stay awake. And I want to ask you a little bit about how you're dealing with the challenges that are being presented to you today. I know a little bit about it, but I want you to tell folks what you're trying to do to keep busy.
Are you implying that there's challenges today?
Every day there's a challenge, Ken. We have to rise to meet them.
We're
meeting them. That's why we have dogs. The dogs say, you have to meet this challenge today. Open that can of food. Take me out.
This is true. Actually, I tell people this, my dog, Honey Pie, to her, this is the best year she's ever had.
Of course it is.
Because I'm with her 24 hours a day.
It's all right.
I actually have a new conspiracy theory that the dogs caused the COVID, because then they
want you home.
Part of their master plan.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But how am I meeting the challenge? Well, like a lot of people, trying to come up with some new concepts where we don't have to do anything close to people, because we can't now. I've done a handful of gigs with a real band playing for humans in a room, but there's not a lot of those right now anywhere.
But tell us about those gigs.
Well, I did a date at the Deerhead Inn, the historic Deerhead Inn, out at the Delaware Water Gap. They did social distancing. It was about 25% capacity. We did 2 separate shows. They sold out both shows. They charged a little more money. And I played a gig in Newport Beach, California, same kind of concept. Did one in Colorado, same thing. But maybe one a month if I'm lucky. And then some streaming things for clubs like Smalls. And I did a streaming thing for Birdland. But I live in New York City. Rent is high. People could say, well, you could choose to live somewhere else, but not to do what I like to do. I've only been a musician my whole life. I've only traveled. That's what I do. That's how I make my money. I don't live with a partner or a spouse that works. I don't have a backup job. I don't have a teaching thing. So there's some of us out there that's our situation. So I haven't really made any significant money since March, and it's looking like that's going to continue at least through the first half of next year. And I think a lot of people just don't understand how dire it is for a lot of us, because we're just living on savings. I think we're about the same age, and
I'm a little older. I was born older.
Oh well, I say nothing.
In general.
Yeah. But in jazz years, you're older.
Yeah. Oh.
But so I think people don't get that concept. We work for ourselves. Until they made a special dispensation for us, we couldn't even file for unemployment as self-employed people. The musicians' pension fund is near collapse. So and many other people like me, we're relying on the kindness of strangers, as it were, to give us donations, to give us money, and we're trying to produce things. In return, I'm doing a streaming series every Thursday night at 7 on Facebook, and then they go up on YouTube, called In the Moment, with this great piano player, Glenn Zaleski. And I set a challenge for myself. Every week, I choose 6 to 8 songs that either I've never played or I've only played once, and it's definitely the first time the 2 of us have played them, and we're doing only first takes, mistakes and all, because it's that adrenaline rush you get, from setting those kinds of goals. Keeps me practicing, keeps me on my toes, and also I've got a lot of time on my hands, and I've got a huge storage room downtown that's half filled with sheet music, song folios.
It's like the last scene in Indiana
Yes,
Jones,
it is.
Raiders
Yeah.
of the Lost
Yeah.
Ark, all those boxes.
That's it. So I go down there periodically and dig out some more music and discover all these songs. I've always been like that anyway. I think if you're going to do a Gershwin song or a Harold Arlen, why not dip past the usual 10 or 20 that people do? And there's so much they wrote, and so much of it is good. So that's been a goal, and that's been a nice thing to do, and I think people are enjoying it, and word is getting out there about that series.
Good, and I hope it will, and I'm going to help you to get that word out there even further. It's funny because you talk about discovering the tunes that are not part of the usual repertoire of a composer. Years ago, I had a gig at Sardi's, and that went on for 2.5 years. I'll tell you a funny story about John Pizzarelli in a minute and that gig. And every week the shtick was a singer from a show or cabaret and a different composer. So we get a lot of understudies. They were available, and they would prepare the songs of Harold Arlen or Gershwin or Irving Berlin. I got the Berlin granddaughter to come. I met Frankie Fain, Sammy's son. It was nice. We got a lot of press. We got a lot of exposure. And so I would ask them, what would you like to sing of the work of Berlin? And they would come up with tunes. Oftentimes they were not the usual. I would help them. So I would go to the book and I would find the music, and I was always copying music on Friday nights so that the band had something to look at. So I feel, as you do, it's really great to explore, there are always works in the trunk, so to speak.
Yeah.
Things that are tossed out of shows, for example. And it challenges you, it keeps you learning new stuff.
I always liked the way Duke Ellington programmed concerts, because he would give people the hits. He'd kind of bookend a concert with the hits, and then he'd give them some new suite that he wrote in the middle.
Yep.
And if you take the audience by the hand a little bit, you can walk them into any path you choose, because you're showing them, it's not that difficult to go from, let's say, Harold Arlen to Thelonious Monk to maybe even Ornette Coleman. There's a line that connects all these people. So it's fun. I like programming things like that too. I just have a side question. When John Pizzarelli came to Sardi's, just a question between us, was all the silverware missing by any chance? Because he has a problem.
We checked the spoons.
Okay.
And actually, after he left, there were more spoons than when he came in.
That's
so
really
I think he contributed 2 or 3.
Right.
A soup spoon we found
a little weird, but
on
okay,
the bar.
I'll
on the
go with
bar.
that.
I'll tell you that quick story though. It's very funny. Sardi's wanted to try another act later in my tenure there. So they brought in a guy whose name is John Molina. And John Molina was, at that time, a young, handsome, Italian-looking guy with nice hair, and he played the guitar. And he had, I think, another couple of guys with him. I think it was a trio or quartet. And so, I went naturally to check him out and see, they wanted to alternate, and I said, fine. I've been here a long time. I said, I've had a great run here. And so I'm checking him out, and the management liked him. Who comes in? John and his entourage down the street where they were playing at the time that show called not Swing.
Was it the Mercer?
Yeah.
Show?
What was the name of that show?
I don't remember. I don't involve myself in anything John does.
Well,
so,
we'll plug it in. Actually, people don't know there's the comedy team of Peplowski and Pizzarelli, and I've seen it, and it's never held over, but I do like it. I catch it when I can, the few minutes that they do. We'll put in the name of the show. So they come in, and they're sitting at the bar, and I happen to be at the bar next to them. And they're looking at this, and I swear to God, one of John's colleagues said, "Hey, look at this. He copped your gig." It was like the understudy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It was very funny.
It's like All About Eve.
It was.
Yeah.
It was very funny.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was funny. Ken, you write. Tell me about some of the things you've written that maybe you are or would like to write.
Yeah. Well, I consider myself more of an interpreter of people's songs than a writer of original compositions, but I like to arrange things. I've been doing some producing jobs.
Who have you been producing for?
Well, I produced Aaron Johnson's
Right,
record, which
right.
is not out yet. I produced a record of Mark Lokman. I did one for this great Brazilian singer named Manu Lafleur, where I overdubbed a lot of instruments myself, wrote for strings on there. And I produced a record for this wonderful trio called La Lucha. And that record is out now, and I like it because I like to listen to all kinds of music. I'm not a jazz snob that way, and these guys were into that completely, and so we picked some interesting covers of even like 80s rock tunes, but they do it their own way, and I enjoy that. But the point being, more than writing original stuff, I try to find material that's good for me or material that's good for others, and then shape it into something that I feel is my own. Otherwise, I don't want to play it. If I can hear it, if I can hear a concept or hear myself playing it, then it's a choice for myself.
Sure.
Every once in a while, I write an original song, and my litmus test is if I like something by somebody else better, that goes on the record, not my song, because we're all kind of lying to ourselves if we have these grandiose dreams of lots of publishing money coming in.
Well,
especially in the jazz world.
I suppose that's true. If Tony Bennett records your tune, then you may have the exposure and draw a little salary from that. I don't write music. I always say I have enough trouble with other people's music. There's one tune in my head. It was inspired by my wife. I haven't set it to paper. At some point I will. Maybe they'll play it at my wake.
Hopefully you'll be there.
Yeah, I'll be late,
Yeah.
but I'll be there. And I always say I don't want any music. weeping. I want mourning.
That's
I don't
good.
want like soundtrack. None of that board with photos from when
right,
you're 10.
exactly.
No, I don't want any of that jazz. I'm not interested in that. I want people to be really crushed.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll talk a little bit about clarinetists.
Sure.
Okay. I know you studied with the great Robert Marcellus of the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra, correct?
Yeah, I took 2 lessons from him, which were just amazing, because just to be around that guy and that beautiful dark round sound of his, I think one of the most beautiful sounds ever to come out of a clarinet were produced by him. You can listen to any of those George Zell Cleveland Orchestra recordings.
Sure.
But I mostly studied with a guy who played in the Cleveland Ballet, a guy named Al Blazer, who really cracked the whip with me. Very tough teacher. I was kind of a hot shot in Garfield Heights, Ohio, and he kind of reduced me going back to almost fundamental stuff that I was kind of sliding over. And I would get mad at him, but so mad that I thought, well, I'm going to show him. I'll work on this stuff so much he can't possibly say anything, you know. And he was a great teacher for me. And I even went to college just for 2 years, but I went to Cleveland State to continue studying with him, and then got a job on the road. But to this day, we spoke about this earlier, but most of my practicing is classical etude books, and I still play classical music. I participate in some festivals where I get to do both things. There's one called the Siletz Bay Music Festival that goes out. That's in Oregon, Lincoln City, Oregon, and it goes from the last 2 weeks before the 4th of July. And I'll play some classical chamber music, and then I'll do a pops concert on the 4th of just fun things. So that keeps me going. That music I find, and I go through etude books at random and sight read them too. So every day I go through a ritual of pulling books out, opening pages at random, and sight reading 4 or 5 books, and trying to play them straight through, because then I'm working on my sight reading abilities, sharpening the mind. I knew James Moody, and he was a lifetime student. He bought everybody's method books that came out.
Yep.
And would share them with people. I got some packages in the mail from him, just saying, check this out. And his thing was, you should just keep your mind open. Somebody might have something that will work for you, and you can just take the ideas and take them or leave them, But if you don't stay open to everybody's concepts, then you're limiting yourself.
Sure. I think Benny used to say that he studied most of his life. He did study, I believe.
And he was a practicer, too.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Heavy practicer. Yeah.
I used to live across the alley on 55th Street from Frank West.
Oh.
And he was always playing and always practicing. And I played the saxophone at that time, not well. And I would play something and he would slam the window down.
Oh.
So, I felt that, we were kindred spirits. He was actually very nice. He
called an editorial comment.
He would play a little back at me, Well, I want to talk a little bit about Goodman, because I have also been influenced by Benny Goodman since I was a kid. I came to this music I guess when I was 12 or 13 years old. And at that time, of course, people of our generation bought LPs. Records, folks, big platters. I actually have a gramophone at home you have to wind up. But I bought all these Bluebird reissues.
Yes.
The collection and I bought all those volumes of Goodman from the mid-30s to the late 30s into the 40s. And he was my first original heavy influence. And I used to look at those albums. I don't know if you ever did this, Ken. I used to look at the albums and I'd read them time and time again. And I'd say, oh yeah, Jaime Schertzer is in this band. And I thought, those guys meant something to me. And I had some friends who were around at that time. And I used to ask them, because I love the older generation, tell me a story. Tell me what it was like.
Yeah.
Did you work with this one? And so I thought to know them a little bit. And, Benny was amazing.
Yeah.
I also listened a lot with my late great friend and mentor Don Joseph, the trumpet player, to the Sauter arrangements that Goodman had commissioned in the early 40s.
Yes.
And a little beyond.
That's when he opened his big band up to more, the baritone sax and four trumpets.
Yep. And a lot of vocals, along with instrumentals, Helen Forrest and Peggy Lee. And so we used to sit and listen, and he taught me how to listen to certain instruments at certain times, and to pick out the voicings and to really follow a certain line. And those arrangements are wonderful anyway. And I really became very, very familiar with that kind of writing. And I love obviously the arrangements that Artie Shaw commissioned from Sauter.
Right. But I tell my students, you hit on something here, that I tell them, when you listen to a record, don't just listen to your instrument. Listen to the bass and drums. Listen to, if it's an arrangement, as you say, listen to the lines. But sometimes I've learned a lot just from the way a rhythm section comps behind a soloist, of things I like, what I don't like. Why does this work? Why doesn't this work? How come you can have a bass player and drummer, one plays on top of the beat, one plays behind the beat, but they lock in because their time is so strong. There's so many things to learn from records like that. And even, as you pointed out, the liner notes would make us go and buy other records, because they talk about Coleman Hawkins, and they talk about another clarinetist, and we'd go and get those records.
Sure. And I also I love to learn, as I said, about these guys. So even recently I'll read an article about Cliff Lehman, who my friend Don lived with at one time in the Belvedere Hotel, I believe, which is on 48th Street. And I read about his life, and about the kind of drummer he was, and that he was very happy to be in the background and didn't want to take a solo. And then I'll read about Dave Tuff, who worked with Shaw and Goodman, and what his approach was like. And I like all the instruments.
Yeah.
Some people said, "Oh, you like the piano?" Yeah, I want to hear what anybody has to do, because it influences me. I'm influenced by Clifford Brown. I'm influenced by Art Tatum.
Yeah.
So I try to keep an open mind. Now, specifically about Goodman and Shaw, I heard you list a number of clarinetists when you were talking to Ed Jaffe that you're influenced by and that you like.
Yeah.
All of them that you mentioned are terrific and that I have listened to and that I'm influenced by. I moved from Goodman as a very heavy first influence to Shaw, and I moved from, I think, because while Goodman was a phenomenal technician and had a beautiful, light, I think, lyrical, but also could really dig in and growl with the instrument in a way maybe Shaw did not. Shaw, I've heard it said, and true, he had one sound. It was a beautiful sound. He also had a lot of technical prowess, and in a way it's a matter of taste. I've tried to bring them both together in my concept.
Yeah.
But like you have said, coming essentially from a legitimate approach, yes?
Yeah, and there's no right or wrong, in music. If you like somebody, that's valid for you, and it's not my place to say, oh no, so people are still asking, who was better, Benny or Artie?
Well.
And the answer is myself. But anyway, these are the jokes, folks.
Well, listen, they're dead. We can't help them.
That's true. They're still decomposing, in fact. That's how creative they are. But I always thought Benny was the hotter player.
I agree.
Just for improvisation. But Artie was just a phenomenal clarinetist across the board. I mean, what he did with the instrument to this day is kind of unrivaled.
I think Artie, and I know a lot about Artie Shaw. I've read, I've seen interviews, I've listened, all of it for years. He could be a little schmaltzy. I happen to like a little schmaltz.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Sometimes you can move a little bit. I have always said, I say it to Pete, I say, don't be sentimental. Don't, in other words, take a tune and make it either cloying or you don't want treacly in that, because it stands alone with its own beauty. If you play it a certain way,
you have to mean it. That's the thing. If you can feel a song and convey what it means to you, then it's not corny. It's a subtle thing that you just learn to share that with the audience. This is something I like. Here's why, and then you play it for them.
You mentioned Glenn Zaleski.
Yeah.
Tell me other musicians that you like to work with currently, and maybe who you've worked with in the past.
Sure. Well, there's now a group of younger players that's really into playing kind of standards-based jazz, and Glenn's one of them. There's a piano player named Ehud Asheri that I like to use.
Sure.
There's a bassist and drummer. They're married. They live out in L.A., but they come to New York a lot, and I use them all the time. Katie Thoreau and Matt Wittick. I like Nicky Peratt, the bassist. For more traditional jazz, I love Kevin Dorn. He can really play like he loves George Wettling, and that's kind of cool. And I have a trio sometimes with Kevin and Rossano Sportiello, and we do all that kind of, I hate to give things labels, but kind of 1930s based
of course
jazz. And then I have a group with Matt Wilson, Martin Wind, and Glenn that plays, again, for lack of a better word, more slightly contemporary. Mm-hmm. And I use Peter Washington sometimes too, but I do have a group of players I love. On the West Coast, Joe LaBarbera on drums, and Tom Rainier, a piano player, and great clarinetist. If you don't know him, check him out, Tom Rainier.
Okay.
Wonderful clarinetist too. And he was very close with Artie and Buddy DeFranco.
Uh-huh. Also, wonderful player. I got to hear him live at Iridium with Tony Scott.
Oh, that was they called me to do that gig.
Okay.
Buddy did 2 or 3 years at Iridium with this weird, he got Tony Scott and one time Perry Robinson.
Uh-huh.
And then somebody else, and Tony Scott took over the whole thing. And
yeah. Well, interesting guy too. I read up about him.
Yeah.
He was very much an associate of Bill Evans.
Yes.
And he recorded some wonderful stuff, very sweet, soft, lyrical, breathy things as ballads. Very proficient in there's one tune, standard that he did, which is really great that I heard at that time. And then some say he was almost the beginning of the New Age music. And he went to the Far East. And there was something even that I've read, Ken, that was something happened to him over there. They think that perhaps he had trouble with one of the governments. They thought maybe he was a spy, and then when he came back, apparently he was never quite the same. And when I saw him,
definitely eccentric.
Yeah, when I saw him, well, he's getting more eccentric, I think, as the years progressed. When I saw him, he had a giant long beard and white hair, and he was saying things like, "This is a 1936 Vito," and he would play it. I'm the loudest clarinet player in the world. But you know what? There was stuff there to offer.
Of course. We used to refer to him as Rasputin. And I remember the first time I ever met him, I was playing a festival somewhere in Europe, and one of the musicians on stage taps me on the shoulder. He says, "And you see that guy over there who looks like Rasputin?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "That's Tony Scott. Whatever you do, don't let him sit in." He would completely take over the gig.
Yeah. He was from Morristown, from Jersey. Let's talk about your recordings. Not too long ago, you've made some of these. Tell us about them.
Okay, well, one that I'm really proud of. Over the years I've commissioned a lot of arrangements for myself. And
who are some of the arrangers?
Well, Mark Lopman is my primary guy. He's a very talented writer. And Mark and I have a real kind of shorthand where I can call him and be very specific about what I want. And I'll say, listen to this recording of this, and this is the feel I'm going after, and he gets it. He'll send me a sketch. Sometimes I edit it, send it back to him. So we have a great relationship. He's written a lot for me over the years. Dennis McCrell wrote some things for me. I also, on this record, adopted one of my favorite records is the Ellington Sinatra record, which a lot of people kind of pass over because there was a little tension in the recording process, and Frank didn't talk a lot about the record, but Billy May wrote all the arrangements, sounding like they were Duke Ellington arrangements. And I presented a concert in LA a few years ago of all those, and I re-edited the arrangements, changed some endings, and opened them up as instrumentals, and they work so well. So I put a few of those on the record too. And I had, and also a late great composer and arranger named Alan Ganley, who was a fantastic drummer from London, also wrote a lot for the BBC, and he wrote some beautiful charts for me. So I finally had a chance. The lady at Arbor's Records was kind enough to pay for this record, and you know how expensive it is to do a big band record.
I do.
And I did it in the real old school way. I had everybody in the same room. No, I couldn't overdub or redo a solo if I wanted to, because I'm standing right next to the saxophones, But I like that. Again, I like to put that kind of pressure on myself. Really proud of that record. If I say so myself, I think it's one of the best things I've done. And the band sounded great. It's all the wonderful players in New York, some of whom you've used over the years. And so the record's called Sunrise. And then I have a thing. Dick Hyman and I have collaborated for many, many years, and our favorite thing to do is play duos together. And when we do a gig, we've reached the stage where we don't even talk about the music ahead of time. Nice. Hold on.
It's good luck.
We'll cut. Good timing. Okay. When we do a gig, we don't even talk about the music ahead of time. Somebody will start playing, and then the other person chimes in. But this record, we did a record called Counterpoint, Lerner and Lowe, Dick Hyman and Ken Peplowski in duets, also on Arbor's Records, where we did all songs of Lerner and Lowe. There's a wonderful lady who runs the estate of, and is in charge of the Lerner and Lowe music, and she was looking for projects to do. And Dick wrote frameworks for us, changed all the songs up. It's almost kind of modern classical settings, and then either one of us would take a left turn in the middle of a song and start improvising, and that's what you hear on this record. So I'm proud of that one too. It's called Counterpoint. I've got a lot of records out, but those two, I think, are, if I say so myself, they're some of the best things I've done, and I'm real happy about them.
It's gratifying, I think, when you continue to progress with your projects, and they do get better. I certainly feel that way, thank goodness. And hey, look, it's a continuum.
Yeah.
You start somewhere, and you're 40 years playing this instrument,
Sure.
45.
Yeah, more.
Listen.
We have to challenge ourselves.
That's right.
We do, because you don't want to grow stale. You don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over.
No, of course not.
So I set a lot of those challenges for myself, and I like to. But I remember years ago, Buddy Morrow, when I was on the Dorsey Band, when he convinced me to move to New York, and he said to me, "You always have to play with people above your level, or try to."
Oh, absolutely.
So you
Everybody's
learn from
above
them.
my level.
Well, no. But that's the beauty of being in New York too.
Yep.
Is there's always new people coming in, new circles of players, so that process never ends.
Yeah, I tell people I hire well.
Yeah.
We'd like to play a cut from one of your records. Could be these or something else.
Yes, thank you.
Anything of your choosing.
Yeah, I would pick The One I Love Belongs to Somebody Else.
Okay.
Arranged by Mark Lopman.
Okay.
And I wanted a real hard swinging arrangement of this song. And I love the way Sinatra did it. Well, I love the way Sinatra did everything. But the band sounds so great on there, and very inspiring to play with those guys. And I think Mark hit it out of the park with his arrangement too.
Okay, folks, we're going to play The One I Love Belongs to Somebody Else, written by Gus Kahn and Isham Jones. Ken Peplowski Big Band. I hope you enjoy it. wonderful music. It's timeless music. It's music that Ken has trafficked in all his life. I certainly have been as much a part of the jazz scene as I can be, and I really like to be an advocate for music and the other arts. It's one of the reasons why I started this podcast. I want to thank Ken Peplowski, but before I let him go, folks, these are challenging times, and the arts community has really been devastated by the lack of work and the unfortunate circumstances that have befallen us. People just cannot get together in close quarters to listen to live music or theater or dance. And so I think it's really up to you to step up and support these artists. Ken Peplowski is the gold standard of clarinetists, saxophonists. I have been influenced by him. It's been a pleasure to listen to him, both recorded and live. And I urge you to purchase by either buying the old school CD or stream his music. And he does do these performances with Glenn Zaleski called
In the Moment.
In the Moment, and you can find that on YouTube
and Facebook.
And
on
Facebook,
my page.
and you may pay for the privilege, and you should. You should pay for the privilege because a few dollars will help. Also, Ken Peplowski is willing to take on students.
Oh yeah.
And so if you reach out to him, I guess through his website, perhaps.
Yeah. They can also email me at kenpeps@yahoo.com or the website, either way.
Either in person, perhaps, in the
person,
area,
yeah, or
or
Zoom.
on Zoom.
Yeah.
And I'm going to study. I'm glad that he's saying that he's available. And I think anyone who's serious about playing the clarinet, be it classical or jazz, should consider studying with Ken Peplowski. We have to make sure Ken Peplowski does not, in musicians' parlance, get too dark. I want Ken Peplowski happy. He has a wonderful laugh. He's a lovely human being. And
I wrote this again.
I hope to have him back at some point in the future. Ken, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
For making yourself available and contributing to my project. Folks, you've been listening to Ken Peplowski. This is Joe Traina. Please join me. I hope you'll listen in again on Anchor FM, Radio Public, Spotify, and other platforms where podcasts are posted. Thank you very much. Be safe out there.
You've been listening to Please Join Me with Joe Traina. Be sure to listen anywhere you get your podcasts. Keep up with joetrainamusic.com for news and new episodes. Be sure to look out for Joe's newest recording, Tip of the Hat, due out later this month on all streaming services and wherever fine music is sold. This episode was produced by Caroline Voigt.